Hello, it's Yvonne. How are you? I'm here, I'm back, and I'm ready to chat. So, I have been traveling, and you may have seen some videos that I made. You may not. So, I'm going to talk about some tales from the trails, but not just my recent travels to Turkey and to Greece, but um, just tales from my own backyard, from a lunch that I had this week with some long term friends, and also from a hiking event that I did on the weekend. So, lots to share. So, thank you for being here. So, I'm Yvonne, founder and CEO of Women's Fitness Adventures. We've been around for 11 and a half years now. And in that time, we have helped thousands of women get into hiking, whether it's through our online or in person training programs, our in person events, our own multi day adventures close to home and around the world, or connecting with other women who like to travel outdoor and hike through our 24/7 community. So if you're watching live, please go ahead and say hello. And if you're watching on replay, I'd love to hear it too. And if you're watching over on YouTube, thank you for tuning in as well. So the first tale from the trail comes from my time in Turkey. And if you read our newsletter a couple of weeks ago, you would have heard me talking about my Turkish delight story. And so for 50 odd years, I had been telling myself that I didn't like Turkish delight. End up in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, which is Turkey is just amazing. And it is a real melting pot of East meets West meets Asia meets Middle East, a whole lot of things. It's a real bazaar. And so here we are at the Grand Bazaar where there's such an assortment of shops and just a visual feast. And I'm standing outside the Turkish Delight shop because we were apparently at the best Turkish Delight shop, but I think every shop in Turkey is the best Turkish Delight shop. And I'm standing there with my arms folded out the front going, I don't want to be in this shop. I'd rather be in the handbag shop or somewhere else. I don't like Turkish Delight, which stems from that Cadbury blocks of Turkish Delight, which were the last squares left when we were kids. But I went inside and I tasted the Turkish Delight, and oh my gosh, did it blow my head off. It was just amazing. There was pistachio, and there was chocolate, and there was nougat, and there were just hundreds of flavors. And it didn't taste like what I thought it was. And so my point there is that I had been telling myself a story for so long, but the story had no basis. It was something that I had made up in my own head that I kept playing over and over again. Was it serving me? Probably yes, probably no. I mean, Turkish Delight's not really a deal breaker, right? But if you think about that story when we get to the stories we tell ourselves about the things we can't do or the things we can do can really restrict us from living our best life. And I know inside our community, when we have our Sunday walk and talks online, that we often talk, many of us say that we can't sing. And we say that because when we were all in primary school, no matter what school you went to, it was, the teacher saying, well, you can't sing, you can't be part of choir. And for that reason, we've told ourselves all through our lives that we're not a singer, and it even plays out today. So that's just one example. And so we may never have bothered to try singing because we had been told that story from very early on. But it's the same with perhaps an injury. It's perhaps someone has said to you, you're not coordinated, or you have a sore knee, or when you were 19, you rolled your ankle and you can't do this or you can't do that. And just because that thing was once then doesn't mean it always has to be so. And so if we have told ourselves, I don't hike because I have a sore knee, is that really a truism, or is that something that we are hanging on to because we feel it's serving us to do or not do the things that we want to? And when that could maybe be solved by doing some of the right strength training and improving muscle strength and that sort of thing. Can the not singing be improved by taking up some singing lessons as an adult? So think about the stories that you tell yourselves, and are they serving you for what you want to do, or are they inhibiting you for something else that you would like to do? So, for example, I have been told I'm not a very good basketball player because I'm too short. I can't do anything about the height. Doesn't mean I'm not a good basketball player. I'm just not a good basketball player in relativity to everybody else. It doesn't mean I can't have a go. So have a think about the stories that you're telling yourself and whether those stories are the reality that you want, or whether they're just something that you're hanging on to and maybe terrified to let go of. And I think that's what I love most about the Couch to Mountain program that we run every year, is that every single woman that goes into that program has dipped her toe in because she wants to make a move from where she is to this great outdoor life of hiking and outdoors, and that movement and adventure through just being physically active. So the second story is another one from Turkey, but it also occurred again on the weekend as well. And that is that time and distance and elevation do not equal footpath hiking. So our team is currently up on the Larapinta Trail in the Northern Territory. They're doing 100 kilometers. The photos are few and far between because reception is not readily available, which is fabulous because we have that opportunity to escape. But they're walking on completely different surfaces to what we normally walk on when we're at home or in our own backyard, or when we're doing our own training. And so when the trail becomes more technical, more difficult than what you're used to, when it becomes from the footpath to the trail, when it becomes from a standard, easily well-graded trail to maybe rocky or tree rooty, we tend to slow down. It tends to become more technically difficult, and we tend to need to really watch our feet. So it takes less time or more time to walk on a more technical trail than it does to walk on, say, the footpath. But then you throw in some hills in there, you throw in some pack weight, which may just be water, who knows, depending where you are, and it changes the game again. So when you look at a trail and it says 5 kilometers, and our members all know this, don't be lulled into a sense that 5 kilometers on a trail is the same as 5 kilometers whizzing around your paddock or whizzing around your local suburb, because it's not. Because you do need to look at your total elevation gain. You need to look at descent as well, or descent, however you want to pronounce that. So how do you go down? And when you go down, is it a fast down because it's steep? Is it shale and rocky? Is it slippery? Because all of that will slow you down as well. Is it an exposed edge? And you need to look at the cumulative elevation over the technicality as well. So when we were in Turkey, we hiked 1.2 or 1.18 kilometers in just under an hour. It was rocky. We were off track. We were having to pick our way through. There was a bit of a goat trail there, but we were having to pick our way through, and it was warm as well, which really changed the nature of the trail for us and our distance and our time. So think about that as well. And for our members, we will be running a masterclass. I'll be running a masterclass on elevation and how to read trails. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So let me check in. Hello, Karen. Hello, Christine. Hello, Lynn. And hello, Marie from all over the country. So nice to have you here. And if you are watching live, please let me know. And when I was out at a lunch on the weekend with some long-term friends, one of the friends around the table is a fellow runner. And he runs marathons and all sorts of things. And his daughter he just turned 60, given him a 3-day hike on a rocky trail. Now, this guy is pretty fit. He does marathons, he does Ironmans, but he'd never hiked with a pack on his back. And they were doing, carrying all their own gear. So it was quite heavy, about 14 kilos, because water was of the essence as well. But he said to me, I really didn't realize with hiking, like he is fit, that having the weight on my back would change everything, would change my distribution. And I didn't realize just how much water I needed to take. And I didn't realize till I bought it just how much safety and first aid equipment I needed as well. He said the hiking thing is very different to just being running fit, to being triathlon fit, to being, bike, swim, run fit. So thinking about, this distance, time, elevation is also relative to whether you are hiking fit or not. Now, anyone can get hiking fit. It's just a matter of following a plan and a program to make sure it's applicable to the trail that you want to hike. So hello, Kerry, and hello, Robin. Yes, Robin, I remember we met in Turkey. What a beautiful lady you are. So nice to see you here. So the other lesson from the trail, so the first one was the stories that we tell ourselves and what we hang on to. The second one was that time, distance, elevation does not equal footpath hiking, and we can't just slap a blanket 5 kilometers in an hour, done and dusted, because it just doesn't work like that. The third one is on the weekend we ran our third and final session here in Brisbane of our Welcome to Hiking bundle, and I love those bundles. I love it when, just like our Couch to Mountain program, when we get women coming in who are starting their hiking journey or resuming their hiking journey from a break, and why they're doing it. And the most common thing is, I'm here for the friendship. I'm here for the connection. I'm here to meet other women who are like me. But I don't want to be that old person. I don't want to be labeled that old lady over there. I have other hobbies, but those hobbies are sitting hobbies. So I want something that gives me movement, because I want to be active in another 10 or another 15 years. So motion is our lotion. But one of the stories the lady said was, that she and her husband were in an aisle in Bunnings, and there were 2 other younger people down there, and the store person was talking to the younger people and said, oh yes, just go up behind the old couple over there they were in their 50s. And she's looking around thinking, who is the old couple? And thinking they're actually referring to her. So it was really interesting. How we perceive ourselves is not how others perceive us, but one of the predictors of how people see you is how you move through the world. And in the personal training world, you can tell sometimes the age of a person by the way they walk towards you. And if you're hunched over, that's a dead giveaway that you're not focusing on strength, and that you may be. We can tell an age, but I'm not going to do that there. So just be mindful of that. But we all collectively, when we were at the Welcome to Hiking bundle, we're talking about, and I think it's a theme for women, about tummies. Because we're all, no matter what size we are, a little bit paranoid, most of us, some aren't, about our tummies. But you know what? On every hike I go on, every multi-day I go on, our recent time in Turkey, the roomies are here, the turkeys are here. We all worry about something physically about ourselves. But you know what? Every single woman on our hike is strong, and she is capable, and she is spirited, and we are all different ages and all different shapes and all different sizes, but it is the physical strength, because we've been working on it to be in this hiking location, that gives us the mental strength to be then in that physical space again. So it doesn't matter how you look at it. If you find that group of like-minded women, because it's all about our strength. It is not about our tummies, our pouches, whatever they were calling them. It is not about our shape, our size, or our age. It is about our strength. And that strength is something that we carry on for decades if we choose to. And I was chatting with a colleague today during her program, and it was, what does healthy aging look like for me? And for me, it is able to, in decades to come, choose how I move through the world, and that I can do it on my terms, and to keep moving, and not, sometimes stuff happens and you can't do anything about it, but how to, for me, healthy is, what do I need to do now to move through the world in 10 and 20 years? So an example of that is, over the last couple of years, I was a product of the 70s dentists, nothing against dentists, but it was, let's put some fillings in there. And those fillings were the mercury fillings. And they've now been, I went to a new dentist, and because my other one retired, and she said, look, you could do nothing with your fillings, but eventually your tooth is going to crack. Now that could be now, or it could be in 20 years' time. Or you could have a crown. And I needed a few, and I went, yeah, crowns are a lot of money. But, I got home and I thought about it, and I thought, I don't want to wake up in 10 or 20 years' time with cracks in my teeth, thinking, I should have done that. And that to me is what healthy is. What can I do now that I'm going to look back on and go, I'm so glad I did that at that time, because it's really made a difference to where I am now. So I did the crowns over a couple of years along with the health fund help. But now I'm in a position where, I've done the best I can for my teeth. And so to me, that is also doing the best we can for our bodies, for what our future selves will thank us for. Now, if this is relating to you, please, if you can relate to this, please let me know. If you think it's a whole lot of hogwash, let me know as well. We'll go from there. Hello, Anne. Hello, Ronnie. Nice to see you, Ronnie. Hello, Suzanne. Christine, are we doing another bundle in Brisbane? Yes, we are. It is in August and we'll have details out soon. And then, as I said, I was at a luncheon yesterday with some long-term friends, and it was beautiful. It was a really nice afternoon, very relaxed. We lingered a long time over lunch, some beautiful food. And we were discussing, we'd known each other a long time. We were discussing aging. We were discussing stories, opportunities, moments, lessons from ourselves now to our younger self as well. And it's interesting when you start talking about things, and I say this all the time with our Women's Fitness Adventures community, because I've seen it play out for the last 11 years. It's when you walk alongside a woman who is shares the similar interests. You may have only just met them, but there's this connection, and I see this in our community all the time. But it's when you start talking about things, no matter what they are, that you realize that the problems that you have or the circumstances you find yourself in are not unique to you. You might think that you're totally isolated and alone, and this couldn't possibly be happening to anyone else, especially when times are tough. But when you start talking about it, you realize that you're not the only one, that someone beside you or ahead of you or behind you might have the same story, just a little bit of a different plot. They might have the same characters, but the characters have different names and a little bit of different background. But the theme is very similar. And when you start talking about that, you realize that you don't have to be alone in the journey. And I think that as our communities all become a little bit disconnected. So I often ask this on our multi-day adventures. I ask this: if you could be transported to another era, what would that era be? And for me, it would be to the 70s, because I need an era that has electricity. I like electricity. But it's a carefree era where, as a kid, I could go out and play all day. I guess I'm longing, it's the nostalgia, the disconnection from being on all the time. And you could just run to the neighbors, or the neighbors would come up for a cup of coffee after school, or the parents would get together for a brunch on a Sunday, or people would just drop in. And it's that community feel of the 70s that enabled us to have these closer connections, because we did know each other. We did know who lived in our in a 100, 200, 300 meter circle of life. And so because that era doesn't exist anymore, the communities that you find yourselves in are more likely to be online or some sort of physical community that's connected through common interests. It's those places that you need to share the stories, because if we're not sharing the stories, we do feel like we're isolated and we do feel like we're alone. And I think that's a really important point, because we can sit in our own space and worry and wonder and think that we are entirely alone, and we're not. And Ronnie, and hello, Christine as well, or Alison. And Ronnie says, I'm just going to put this up. Ronnie says, as a massage therapist, I see so many clients that are aging, all to different levels. But when I work on people that are my age, it gives me the push to go and use my body while I can, and be the best person I can while I can. Yeah, absolutely. And, thank you for sharing that, Ronnie. And it's interesting because it's easy to say stuff, and I know you do, Ronnie, because you've been in our community, but it's another thing to do stuff. And people will often say, when I ask what's your highest priority, my health and my family, But when it comes to family, move heaven and earth. When it comes to health, it will take a back seat unless it's put to the absolute front as the priority. And I was talking to my niece, and she's a young mum with 3 young girls, and she was talking about finding time for her. And there is always guilt. There is always mother guilt. There is probably always aunt guilt, daughter guilt. There is always guilt as a woman. There may be for men, but I have no experience in that. But this ability to put ourselves first is quite difficult. But when you do start putting yourself first, I find, and in all the thousands of women I've seen over the years, that we become more capable, better, stronger women for it. And the guilt doesn't go away. We just get easier to manage it and know that we come back a better person. And it also allows our families and our friends and stuff, for us to role model. And I've seen many women who put themselves first have husbands who are going, well, she's doing that. If I don't do something, I'm going to get left behind as well, or partners or friends or whoever it might be, because you become the inspiring person there. So lots and lots of lessons I always have from my trails and my travels. There's plenty more, but time is always of the essence. So thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments later on, please go ahead and drop them in here. If you're watching and you're not a member and would like to know more, check out our website, womensfitnessadventures.com. I'll pop a link in there to membership and you can learn a little bit more about it. I will be back next week. Who knows what I'm going to talk about then. If you have any topics you would like me to cover, please drop them in. But thank you so much, and I'll catch you then. Bye.